This is Manoj, VP of DevRel and Officer of Open Source at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm here at Eurostar in Antwerp, Belgium. Such a wonderful location. And today at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 booth, we have someone special to the community, for everyone else in the testing community, none other than Maaret. Maaret, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. So we've got some interesting questions that I usually do at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 booth here with the thought leaders in the testing space. And Maaret, I have some questions. Let's go.
Right.
Yes. All right. Digital transformation. That's the buzzword everywhere, right?
Is it really?
Not?
I don't know. Maybe it's been that, well, I've been kind of part of these digital things for such a long time that I don't necessarily notice it as a buzzword. But I do know that there's probably still many companies that are kind of like trying to figure out how to come to this space.
Exactly. They have it as part of their KPI or whatever it is. So my question to you is, what in your opinion should the enterprises do to put testing at the center of digital transformation, not keeping it as an afterthought process?
So I kind of wonder, is it really like an afterthought, or is it just it exists by another name? So I think we might be, in general, having in this space, we might be having some issues with the naming things and kind of like agreeing on what we call things. A lot of times, kind of like going into a conversation, if we frame the conversation around quality or around keeping our promises or timeliness, that's a conversation that we're already on the same page with. But when we go with the word testing, there tends to be a lot of these kind of like misconceptions or ideas that it's something smaller than what testers usually mean by testing. So I think a lot of this stuff is that we kind of talk past each other. So I think learning to actually, ask for examples and figure out what do the others mean by digital transformation or testing or whatever words we end up using in this space is something that we're going to need in order to do this.
That's a wonderful angle to look at it. So something related to the same digital transformation, where, as I said, the buzzword or the word that has been around for quite some time, the people that are more concerned about it is about the upper management or the CXOs. And what would be one KPI that you think they should pick it up when it comes to testing, and why?
Well, at least I'm noticing that couple of levels up, the conversation that I keep having is around release times. Like, how long does it take for us, kind of like from having completed programming something, kind of like completing a new feature, into having it available for delivery for the real customers. So kind of this continuity of making small releases and the lead time to releases. So if there was a KPI, well, the one that I definitely generally recommend is watching out on how long does it take for you to make those releases. Because there's usually, in the last space, just before the release, we pack often the wrong kind of testing into that time frame. And following that KPI kind of helps us having the right conversations of moving testing where all the so-called manual work, including manual programming, happens. And that's actually where we want to have the most versatile conversations around what does quality look like in practice.
It's a good thought process. And is there any particular KPIs to look forward, like the DORA metrics?
I am a big fan of the 4 DORA metrics, definitely. So, but again, I find myself often using just the one about kind of release frequency.
Okay.
The one about quality related, kind of like how many of your deployments end up coming back as known bugs. The percentages seem to be very low, and it might not be that we don't fail with the deliveries. It might also be that we don't have the proper channels of knowing all the ways we're failing, especially when we have bigger enterprises, like the messaging of change and its related impact. It's not a straightforward thing. And similarly, the ones about kind of like how frequently we're changing things, I don't find them as useful. So kind of like starting with just one out of the 4 is usually what I go with.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And a question that's not on my list, but just sparked my mind. So if you were to pick one of the many non-functional testing techniques, apart from the exploratory testing that we do, be it performance, accessibility, or all other architectural properties, what would be your favorite, and which one should you recommend?
My favorite is reliability, actually, nowadays.
Okay.
Because we do so much automation these days in so many places. I know there's places that still are struggling to get kind of like automation in place, but in a lot of places that I have been at, there is plenty of automation. So what happens with automation is that we also have kind of like we're continuously redeploying and running the automation again and again and again. And we have environments that get booted up multiple times a day, usually tens of times a day. So they don't actually stay around as long as the real production environment. So I find that the one that we need to really pay attention and design for nowadays is the environment that we don't start over, that actually represents the kind of things we have in our real production environments then. So reliability comes kind of like very high on my list of things.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective, because we often talk about disposable instances, the ephemeral environments, but then having an environment as good as being production that's like stays forever and then you test it really makes the point. So is that the term for SREs? So how does it correlate with the testing, or is a tester should learn about that? Any specific advices?
So it really depends so much on the company. I work currently in a company where we have kind of closed environments. We deliver kind of like, environments for specific airports, and it's kind of closed for them. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they have SREs running that environment then. And I think to some degree, a lot of the conversation in this field is kind of like centered around those kind of like cloud native, cloud first type of companies. Yeah. And we have very different rules on how we deal with the production environments there. But definitely, I think that in the space of testing professionals and the skills that we need to build up in the community, I think that production monitoring, observability, and the SRE space of things, that is an area where you can explore things and learn things about the customers in their real live habitat. And there's many things that will be helpful if that's a space that you kind of get keen in learning.
I think it's an opportunity for QAs to become like a dual roles, like learning more about the reliability of the systems and all. It's an interesting perspective. Thanks, Maaret. Let's talk about a bit on AI. The most interesting question on everywhere you go, like the buzzword again. So, Maaret, what according to you is AI, and where the AI revolution is headed? Is it good? And have you seen, is it doing good in testing space? Or your 2 cents?
So I've been following the space for quite some time, and I haven't really made up my mind completely on what's going on there. Okay. So to some degree, kind of like the whole AI space consists of many different things, like just the basic things like what we do with the Selenium stuff, kind of like being able to click on buttons and do that. Like even if you have no logic, but you had a human actually controlling all of that, you need to have a way of accessing whatever there is in the applications. So sort of that's not what I would consider AI, but we won't get kind of like complete systems with decision making and following action unless we have are kind of like looking at all of those things. So I think we need to look at machine vision, controlling different bits and pieces, automatic decision making, machine learning, and I think currently the conversation is really a lot around those large language models and machine learning in that space basically. So I think it's a wide field, and there's a lot of kind of like bits and pieces for us to figure out, and I'm not sure if I like what's going on in particular in the large language models space right now. I feel like, looking at it again from a community perspective, an open source community perspective, I don't think we were asked when our things were kind of like, taken over and copied to some, multinational corporations, basically, to build their tools. Even if the tools are now then available to us, I'm not sure if that was something that I'm quite okay with. So some of the ethical considerations in this space are maybe the ones that intrigue me the most. And I know that I can't change the route that we're going, but I can change some of the accommodations. So what I'm trying to do right now is, for example, in my own company, agreeing on us contributing more on open source, because we are using people's stuff through this kind of tools. They're helpful tools, like they do some of the kind of like, they make you think about things, and they give you some list that you can compare, and you can say you disagree with this one now, and then you know what you really believe in when you have something to disagree against. So I like the usefulness, but also the accommodations, kind of like contributing back to whoever was there, promoting people who are contributing to open source, somehow figuring out that kind of things, and then contributing to research, of course. Kind of like when you use these tools, so that we wouldn't have more than the marketing messages shared. Kind of like we used it, and here were the impacts. These were the things that we were seeing.
Got it.
So I've been playing particularly with the code generation stuff.
Yep. Okay.
And particularly I've been playing with the different APIs on browser automation.
Nice.
And it's very nice to kind of like notice that the 18 years of Selenium, like the community that we both are from,
Yes.
like it's great to see that the 18 years sometimes confuses these machine models, because there's so many generations of what it has been over the years.
Yep.
Whereas some of the newer ones might have just a single answer right now. But then again, they have those 18 years ahead of them if they plan on being successful for as long as Selenium has been. So it's kind of like an intriguing thing to look at.
Very interesting. I'm deeply lost into it. I think it's a very compelling points made by you, Maaret. I think around starting from AI into LLMs and then talking about open source. So let's talk a bit about the community. You have been there for a very long time. I think you already crossed 500 talks.
Yeah, I think I'm at 530 right now.
530 talks around the world, and that's an impressive feat. So I think this question often comes to me as well, and what better than having it from you? So what is one piece of advice if anyone wants to get started with a public speaking?
Just get started, basically. From that, I'm starting to think about it. If you start doing actions on just showing up somewhere, usually local venues, local communities, they are always looking for volunteers, and they would love for someone to say that, hey, I have this small inkling that I would like to at least try it. I've learned that audiences are actually really friendly. When they show up, they want to learn whatever they can pick out of all of the things you're saying. They want to find that golden nugget. So I think what we just basically need to do is get over ourselves and just show up and share.
Yeah, it's a impressive advice. It's no one else will do it for you. You have to step it up yourself. And then there will be mentors. And I think there's also Speakeasy that you're part of.
Yeah, nowadays it's called Tech Voices.
Tech Voices.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tech Voices is a mentoring program where we have volunteers teaching people, usually from underrepresented communities, teaching them for free on how to do public speaking. And kind of like it's nice when you're showing up on a bigger stage, for example. It's nice when you have someone who gives you honest, kind feedback, kind of in the private before you get on that stage. So it gives you that kind of like certainty of these things I will adjust and these things I will keep and make sure that they stay in the center. And I've seen some awesome speakers. Like I met yesterday here in Eurostar.
Okay.
I met this one lady that has been one of the Tech Voice mentees. We had never met kind of face to face. But we talked here because she did the talk for this conference last year.
Okay.
And it was one of those talks where I remember her because I cried when she practiced. It was just that good. Like the final version that she did, it's just awesome.
Amazing. So Tech Voices, folks, I think that's what you should look up for. And speaking of conferences, TestMu 2023 is coming up in August, and we love bringing new faces to the stage. And I think announcing it new here, I think Tech Voices will also have an opportunity to bring in new speakers. So if you're part of Tech Voices or not yet, I think you should join the platform and have mentors like Maaret. And there's a chance you might get to speak at TestMu 2023. And Maaret, are you excited on TestMu 2023? Have you registered?
I haven't registered. I have already looked it up, and I have kind of like looked at, maybe I will try to make space in my calendar for that.
Of course.
I was there last year.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a nice one to mingle with the people. And I like particularly the ones where the spaces where you can just move around and join conversations. So kind of like getting this, not just showing up and listening to a session, but actually having conversations. That was awesome.
Cool. And folks, we just literally planned out an interesting session by Maaret at TestMu 2023. We're not revealing what it is right now, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. And the topic that we just discussed previously on, getting up to public speaking. So let's look forward to that. And thank you so much, Maaret, for visiting our booth and patiently answering these questions.
definitely. It's nice being here.